everyone. Welcome to the Bodybuilding.com podcast. I'm Nick Colias, an editor for Bodybuilding.com, and Krissy Kendall, PhD, is here. She's the science editor for Bodybuilding.com. Normally, we have a third guest, third microphone. Water bottle's the third guest today. But today, we're going to be enough. Reason being, Krissy, PhD, if I didn't already mention it, our in-house academic has had alarm bells going off like crazy recently when the immensely popular sports supplement creatine monohydrate was in the news the other day. Krissy's not just another swole gym rat. She is a university researcher who has been involved in studies looking at the effects of, among other things, creatine, right?
Creatine itself, yeah. Mm-hmm. That's actually what got me started. My very first study that I was a participant in was creatine.
Okay.
It started the whole thing.
And this one, the one that was in the headlines today, was on NPR and different news outlets, came from the journal Pediatrics. And in it, someone posing as I think it was a 19-year-old, posing as a 15-year-old, called up a bunch of supplement retailers and said, hey, I'm looking to get some mass. I want to get big. What should I take? And the vast majority of them, like 70-something%, I could be getting that wrong, said, well, take creatine, of course. Mm-hmm. Implicit in all of these stories is a question. Is it safe or advisable for teenage athletes to take creatine? And the answer in most of these stories is they say, no, of course not. Doctors say teens should definitely not take it. It's a scary supplement. So I wanted I'm assuming you looked at the study.
Right.
What stuck out to you when you looked at this?
A couple things. One, beyond just how they conducted the research, whether or not, if you agree, I mean, it's the form of research they use or how they collected the data is a form of deception, which is, it's okay to use, but obviously there are some moral issues with that, right? You are technically, I mean, you're lying, you're saying you're someone who you're not. But they did make it clear that even when the retail individuals did not specifically say creatine, if that's what they were looking for, they brought it up themselves. So, but they're still using that as
leading the witness.
Yeah, exactly. So that kind of irked me. But if someone came to me and said, hey, I'm looking to increase strength, I'm looking to increase mass, and they go through everything and they say, can I take creatine or, would you recommend it? Then absolutely I would. If I went through the checklist and, if that's what they wanted to say. Now, if I had a 15-year-old that said, hey, I'm looking to get in shape, is the first thing I'm going to say creatine? No, probably not. But if what they led with is, I'm looking to take a supplement, I'm looking to take creatine, that's what I want to take. Would you recommend it if these are my goals? Then yes, because to me, that's someone who probably did the research. They, if they're an athlete, I'm going to assume that they're eating right, they're on a training program, and sure, you should check with them and make sure. But there's no reason why you can't recommend that to an individual. So, to say that you just had all of these people, the first thing, someone picks up the phone and says, hi, I'd like to take a supplement, take creatine. That's not what happened,
It was set up for creatine from the start.
Exactly. I just feel like, and the other thing that really, stuck out to me is they paired creatine with testosterone boosters, or at least that's how it came across reading the article.
Pure supplement, right?
Well, and they put that together. It was when I asked if I should take creatine and or a testosterone booster.
Oh,
those are two totally separate things. But a lot of times, and this is where creatine gets such a negative connotation to it, or an idea around it, is that people put, a testosterone, synthetic testosterone, a steroid, and creatine, which is a naturally occurring substance, one that our body creates, just not enough that we want to supplement with it. So something that's naturally produced with something that is not naturally, or that you're taking exogenously or putting into your body, which could be dangerous, and you're putting those into the same sentence, into the same breath, that's unfair. And why don't we do that why isn't someone saying, well, vitamin D and testosterone? Why not? Like that, it's for whatever reason, everyone bullies on creatine. Like that's somehow, there's this horrible one and people relate it to, oh, it's a steroid or it's only for bodybuilders. And I could go on and on about all the potential benefits for it. But that was the other thing that really jumped out at me. And when they were interviewing other physicians, there was an ER physician that they interviewed, and the article did say anecdotally, so hopefully people understand that means that that's not scientifically shown. There's no actual research data. If it's anecdotally, that's just someone's personal experience with it or story to it or what they've seen. But an ER physician, had a patient come in and complain of symptoms and Of course, they pinpointed on creatine. So I'm sure they didn't do a full dietary analysis. I'm sure they didn't go through every single possible thing, any other supplement, any other prescription, because there's a lot of things that can. And when studies have isolated creatine by itself, they have shown time and time again that is safe over long term, that does not lead to compartment syndrome or swelling. It does not lead to heat intolerance or heat cramps, heat exhaustion, or increase the risk of that. It doesn't lead to dehydration. It doesn't lead to any of these things that people always point to it. And they just group it with creatine and all these other things. Well, all these other things tend to be those things that can possibly cause all these side effects.
Including, pre-workouts, testosterone boosters, all types of herbal supplements, fat loss supplements. Who knows
what's in there?
Taking.
Yeah,
Right.
But they just pull out creatine. That's the one that they're going to pull out every time.
Now, creatine is not a banned substance, but implied in some of the coverages, this is a bodybuilding supplement. It's not something that normal people take.
Right.
Is that accurate?
Yeah, and that's unfortunate too. We typically just see it with athletic individuals. I wouldn't even see bodybuilding because a lot of what it is, it's a strength. So I would say anyone athletic, but its purposes go way beyond that. And they've done, these great studies looking at older individuals and showing how it maintains muscle mass, muscle strength, bone density. So when you look at past years, okay, so now I can bench 225, 250, whatever, right. But now I can, my 80-year-old grandmother can put her groceries away, can get in and out of bed without a problem, can, reduces the risk of falls and fractures and all sorts of things. So its applications go way beyond it. For whatever reason, it does tend to go more towards athletics because its performance benefits on strength, high intensity performance, on muscle mass. Those blown out of the water and time again is the most effective supplement for that. But we are showing other things that it can be used for as well.
Well, so let's talk specifically about teenagers, though, because there was some implication in some of the coverage that I saw that, that's all well and good for you when you're 21 or you're even 19, but when you're 17, your body is not ready for exogenous creatine.
Yeah, and that to me, okay, so, and I go back to when it grouped it with testosterone, and I agree. You should not be, that's someone's personal decision if whether you want to take testosterone or not. But especially when you're dealing with a teenager, a male teenager who is, potentially going through puberty, either right before or right after, hormones are changing, testosterone levels are fluctuating. By potentially manipulating what your body is producing on its own, it could have long-term effects. So if you're taking something that could affect how your body naturally cycles testosterone or its natural production of testosterone, that could have long-term effects. And I would definitely not do anything that deals with that, especially during maturation or puberty during those times.
Crucial hormonal period.
Exactly.
Right?
Creatine has no effect on that. No effect whatsoever. No more than what a bout of resistance training would do, or anything else that could possibly, or eating saturated fat could influence testosterone levels, or anything else that might influence testosterone. There's nothing that's going to directly increase or decrease testosterone levels. Now, what I will say is, if you're dealing with a 15-year-old who is just, maybe they, for the previous, 14 and a half years, not active at all, but now they want to go out and start, being part of a group sport or something like that. Yeah, they probably don't need to from day one take creatine. And I would tell the same thing to a 30-year-old or 40-year-old who they have been sedentary their entire life. Do they need to take supplements on day one? Probably not.
Right. Activity is your supplement.
Exactly. They're going to see so much with just altering their diet, manipulating their diet and their training and their physical activity level that, probably for the first few months, they're going to have great changes and positive benefits with just manipulating those two. But if I have a 15-year-old who has been in competitive sports since, third grade or whenever you can start putting kids into sports,
or who is regularly lifting,
then there's no reason why I would rather give my child 5 grams of creatine than say, I need you to eat 2 to 3 pounds of raw meat in order to get 5 grams of creatine. It seems a lot safer to give them a teaspoon
Sure.
of creatine.
Now, are there any studies specifically investigating the effects of creatine on teenagers?
So teenagers, I'm not as clear on teenagers, but younger kids I do know. And most of those are case studies. And the reason for that being is for any research study to get approved, it has to go through the Institutional Review Board.
Right.
And it's just a standard procedure, and it's difficult. And, and I can appreciate that process. But it's very protective of women. It's very protective of pregnant women, of children, of elderly, and it's very rigorous trying to get a study approved. That's why we don't see very many studies in women. For that main reason, it's very difficult to get those through the IRB, and the menstrual cycle and things like that can affect results, and they just want to protect and not potentially put a woman at risk for anything where it could, and then ultimately the data's messed up because, she was on her a week before her menstrual cycle, the hormones are messed up now and you can't use any of her data. And we just put her through all of this.
Similarly protective of teens as well.
Right. So
developing.
Exactly. But with that being said, there have been studies where they've given creatine to babies, 1-year-olds, as a neuroprotective benefit in pregnant women as well. Because there are studies, and it's first started, most studies, anytime with dietary interventions or supplements specifically, usually starts in animals, rats. And we found that creatine has a neuroprotective benefit, especially with traumatic brain injuries. Huge for contact sports. Kids play contact sports,
Right.
And they start with Pop Warner or Pee Wee football, and that is, you've got young kids who are playing, soccer too, contact sports, and they're increased risk of concussions. And so that's a big push for me too, is, when people say, don't take creatine, we're starting to show that it has a neuroprotective benefit, and that's been shown in as young as 1-year-olds. No, we did not inflict brain injury on these. So what we did, and it started in animal models, but then what we've been able to show is when young children have been brought into the hospital with traumatic brain injuries or with a head injury, and they were giving them creatine, they noticed that those who had creatine, their number of days in the hospital were reduced because of the swelling in the brain went down and the recovery in the brain and the neurological function. Because creatine is, can be considered in the class of nootropics. So it has some cognitive, some memory benefits as well. But it reduced the number of days stayed in the hospital following a traumatic brain injury or head injury, concussion.
Right.
So yeah, again, I think of all the kids that are playing sports these days, all the kids that are having concussions. My second cousin just had one, and immediately I told my cousin, I was like, he needs to be taking creatine. Right. Just beyond any potential strength benefits, he's a football player. It might benefit him as well, but it's just, protecting his brain as well.
So what about the person who says, well, we don't know the long-term implications? You get a kid started taking this, who takes it for 5 years. Are there studies that are addressing the long-term implications of usage?
I know Kreider, he's at Texas A&M right now, but when he was in Memphis, the longest I believe right now is 2 years. And again, it's hard because, trying to tell someone to do something every single day for an extended period of time is very difficult. But when he was at Memphis, University of Memphis, him and his colleagues had the football team taking creatine every single day. And so the longest study is right around 2 years that we have. Again, no detrimental effects, no blood markers, no negative changes to blood markers, liver changes, renal or kidney changes. And, my biggest thing with this is if you don't want to give your kids creatine, don't give your kids creatine. That's fine.
Right.
But don't give it this bad rap or bad name or say that it has that. I can tell you, if you gave someone ibuprofen for 2 years straight, do we have clinical data that says if I gave my child ibuprofen every day for 2 years, or if I gave my child, this for every single day for 2 years or for 3 years, do I know it's safe? I don't know that we have data even on things that are regulated by the FDA every single day. That's very difficult to do.
Now, there was one interesting thing that I recall seeing from one of the stories was the suggestion that, well, the creatine itself might not be the problem. It's that it's probably tampered and it has steroids in it.
Yeah.
If the creatine was pure, it would be okay, but it's probably not because it's a supplement.
Yeah.
It's a nasty supplement.
And
so how do you interpret that comment? Because it seems a little contradictory. You look at it and you say, "Oh, creatine's a problem," and then they say, "Well, creatine maybe isn't the problem. It's the stuff that's in the creatine."
Yeah. And again, it's just this whole idea of, that the whole supplement industry is corrupt. That we will do whatever, to make $1 and put something on the shelf. First of all, and we've had this discussion before. Yes, you can put something on the shelf, but at that point, FDA has every single right, and they will investigate a product that's on the shelf.
And that happens
a lot.
Daily.
Yeah,
right.
daily. Yeah. So if something is mentioned on the label, or if, you have your ingredient, a claim that's on the label or the ingredient list itself, if the FDA tests that product and either finds that the ingredients do not match what's on the label or the claims are not substantiated by what's in the product, they'll pull or send a letter to the company to pull the product, or there's, legal ramifications to that. So, yes, anything runs the risk of being contaminated, but within the supplement industry, there's certifications, there's testing that you can do. Be a smart consumer. Look for labels that say good manufacturing practices, GMP. That where those products are being manufactured, that the machines are being sterile. That in between, if a manufacturing plant is in charge of processing and manufacturing multiple different products or supplements. If it's following GMP or good manufacturing practices, they should be cleaning and keeping everything from cross-contaminated. And you can also, if you're an athlete, and most would be, are interested in taking creatine, you don't want to take something that's banned because then you could get in trouble. So you look for NSF or WADA certifications, World Anti-Doping Agency certifications. So the supplement industry does have regulations, it has certifications, and you can look for that. You don't have to be sketchy about it and find, some random internet sales place. And anything can be contaminated. And I remember, when we said that, my first thing is, well, spinach has been contaminated.
Chicken,
FDA regulates
ice cream sandwiches.
Food. Yep.
Right.
Peanut butter contaminated. Anything can get contaminated. And so absolutely. And again, it's not the spinach that makes people sick or that could possibly kill someone, or the peanut butter. It's the bacteria in it, just like it's whatever happens to get into a product that.
So with creatine, does all of these safeguards that you're talking about, do they just make it so that it's all of a sudden an incredibly expensive supplement that's way out of the reach of a 16-year-old?
Creatine is the cheapest.
What
that's
it seems
what,
like.
That's what I tell
one
people.
Concern is, on sites, you can buy a huge bottle, $10 with those safeguards in place. It seems right.
Yeah. And that's the thing too. And it's, we're not, you look at some of these other products and some of them, will be $50, $60, $70 for a 1 month supply.
Right.
And I just bought a thing of creatine, which, $10 for, gosh, I think it's like a 3 or 4 month supply. I don't know, it's crazy. It's the cheapest supplement out there, has the most data to not only support its effectiveness, but its safety. And that is, again, all age ranges at this point. I will challenge anyone to find a clinical paper where it directly pinpoints creatine as a cause for renal failure, disease, kidney, or liver, muscle cramps, compartment syndrome, because I have a list, and I have more, and I will say, and I can show you all of these meta-analyses, review papers, actual double-blind, placebo-controlled papers that have shown that it is not dangerous. It's not unsafe to use.
What about things like panic attacks and psychosis you hear about as well?
And I always get comments on paper or articles. We just published one about why women should take creatine, and someone's like, well, I get acne every time. Well, I don't know why you get acne, or there's always that one or two. Everyone can react a little different, and I don't know how to explain that.
But the research does
don't.
Not speak
Yeah,
to
I think some people probably could take something else and have some weird, and it might be in their head or not. I don't want to come to any judgments, but it's.
So what would have made this study better?
For one, I think if they would have included someone who has done research with creatine would have been nice. No one. So they had the pediatrics, like you mentioned, it was published in a journal for pediatrics. The lead researchers have never published or done anything with dietary interventions, supplement interventions, working with athletic populations, have never done anything with creatine. Like I said, the ER physicians, again, nothing to do, research with creatine. All of the other outlets that published or talked about this, again, did nothing to bring in another viewpoint in. To say that a study, I'm not downplaying any of their findings. There are studies all the time that they might find something that's different than what other studies find. And that's why we do research, to come up with new things. But that doesn't mean you ignore or you brush aside what 30, 40, 50 other papers have shown. Which is, that it can be safer. So to just completely ignore that, or why, to just not present any side to that, would have been it would have been nice to see that, or to explain, or even just to separate the creatine and the testosterone boosters. That really irked me, because that's a big one that we see a lot. And it wasn't that long ago that there was another paper that came out that grouped creatine with a group of other dietary supplements that included testosterone boosters and then all these other things that I can't even pronounce because I don't even know what how to say them. If we're going to always, bully this one, like, let's isolate it and look at it individually. Because we don't do the same. Like, no one ever says anything that beta alanine,
right?
Or branched chain amino acids.
Right. Aside from, hey, that thing doesn't work or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. And everything that they presented as far as, this one patient had this or that, none of it was research backed. Right. There was no data on it.
This seems like a big problem.
Yeah.
So it's based on what? Just on legend and rumor?
Yeah. And that's
anecdote.
And that's the thing. So if you were super against something, let's say that I was totally against the keto diet, like I just hated it. And someone came in to, and I was an ER physician, and someone came in and said that they were feeling horrible and and my, initial thing, like I paid no attention to what their training, what their diet, what their supplements were, but they told me that they were following a high fat, low carb diet. And then I just jumped and said, it's the keto diet.
Right.
It's killing you. That might be a little dramatic, but that's what we're doing, without looking at anything else and just assuming that it's 100% that, based on, because keto diet's getting a lot of attention. So to assume, to just harp on one thing and to not really investigate anything else, and it can be somewhat dangerous because, like I said, going back to creatine and compartment syndrome.
Which is?
So compartment syndrome, if you, around your muscles and in certain areas, you basically have sheath, or like a connective sheath. And the muscle underneath can swell or get inflamed, and to the point where your blood vessels, and you have fluid accumulation and causing the area underneath that sheath to swell. It can be very painful, can be very dangerous. It typically happens in extremities, so you think the lower leg or the arm, and it's there have been isolated cases where people have said creatine. But what's interesting is that when you look at those, and there have been a few times where people have really dug in to figure out, is this really creatine? What they found is that those individuals, I know there's one case study where initially they said creatine, they did a heinous workout, an absolutely heinous workout, like rhabdo to the extreme, and they blamed it on creatine. And without looking at blood markers and all these other things that
just pure choice. The
yes.
choice is this
so
person.
When we have this mindset, it could be somewhat dangerous because we're not looking at all these other factors. So if we're just going to say it's creatine and they keep doing this type of workout or what, that's again one example. But if we ignore all these other factors and we have our blinders onto it, we might not be picking up on some of these other issues. And that's what happened. And the same thing, like it's been shown to cause issues with thermoregulation. It's quite the opposite. And it's been shown to be beneficial if you are, training in hot, humid weather, because it helps with water retention, especially if you're doing a higher dose, right? It pulls water into the cell. So it actually has a beneficial effect for thermoregulation.
So it doesn't cause dehydration.
Exactly.
It actually can prevent dehydration.
Yeah, and so when now people are saying like creatine causes dehydration, it's like, no, something else is, and you should probably look into seeing what that is, whether that's you're not drinking enough water, is it change, do you need to modify your training, when you're training, the time, the location, are there other things? And, because let's say you just take out creatine and do everything else the same, you may not be fixing that, and you may be at another risk for dehydration or, another heat illness.
So now I've seen statistics, and I forget where this is from, so I could be getting it wrong, saying that somewhere around 75% of competitive collegiate athletes in different disciplines actually take creatine. So speaking to, a parent perhaps of a student athlete who thinks, well, I don't know if my son or daughter's taking it, but they could be. Do I have something to worry about if that's just part of the athletic culture? Do they have something to worry about from creatine, most likely?
Yeah, no, I don't. And no, I would say no. And I don't think it's a gateway drug to anything else. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think it's like, oh, you start with creatine, where are you going to end up next? I think some people think that way too.
The supplement world, the dark underbelly.
Like, start with the easy stuff and then go somewhere. I would just, as a parent, I would just want to make sure, I'd be like, well, what are you taking? And that's a lot, I'd want to make sure they're taking creatine monohydrate. That's what I take, and that's what I would prefer my child to take. Creatine HCl, creatine nitrate. And the reason for that is just because the research has been done in creatine monohydrate. I'm not saying creatine nitrate or creatine HCl does not work, is not great, whatever it may be, but we don't know the correct dosing yet because there's not been enough research on it. So is 1 or 2 grams of HCl equal to 3 to 5 grams of monohydrate? Right. I'm not sure. So that's the reason for my monohydrate. So again, just making sure that, and because student athletes are, they depending if they're at the collegiate level or higher, they could get urine tests or blood tests. I just want to make sure that they're taking ones that are certified WADA, NSF.
And there are a lot of products out there that are sort of the muscle blend that's got a bunch of stuff and creatine in it as well. You're saying go for the creatine instead.
Yeah,
especially if you're a drug tested athlete.
Yeah, and a lot of them are underdosed too. And the reason for that, some of them because they, you'll take a pre and a post workout. Right. And the pre will have some and the post will have some. And you take them together and you get your 5 grams and that's great. But if you're only taking one or the other, then you're typically not getting enough. If you're a college student, you don't have all the money in the world to take all these supplements. But yeah, then you're also taking potentially a list of other things that you're not quite sure. And some of them could very well be safe. There are some great pre and post workouts out there. If you've got beta alanine in it, some of them are formulated great. And then you have all of them in one. If you are not sure on the dosing, what all of them are, just get a tub of creatine and mix with anything that you want. And you can take it anytime during the day. You can take it pre-workout, post-workout, in the morning, before bed, in the afternoon. It doesn't matter. So that's the other nice thing about having on its own. You can just take it whenever you want. You don't have to take it, with 200 milligrams of caffeine in your pre-workout. So it's like, I forgot to take it. Now I'm going to take it before I go to bed.
Exactly.
So.
Okay, well, you heard it. Krissy's challenge. Come up with the science. Prove her wrong.
There you go. I'm willing to take on anyone.
She's got a list of references.
Yeah, here we go.
Here. This is a piece of paper. Just nothing but creatine references. So she's ready and waiting, everybody. Yes. Thank you for listening.
Awesome.
I hope we were able to provide some clarity.